Time now for the best and worst moves of free agency 2021, at least so far, as we're sitting here on a Monday going over that. Some of the biggest names to move teams, some guys who have not moved. I think one of the biggest names, and we're going to be talking about this from a fantasy football perspective. So there was a lot of big names defensively. And even Trent Williams, I think you could say, was a pretty big move for the San Francisco 49ers to make sure that he was locked up with that team. But let's start looking at some of these guys like, Kenny Golladay, who is going to the New York Giants. And I know a lot of people have some apprehension about this, but for me, this is one of the most interesting moves in all of free agency, because what we're doing right now is we're going to see what Danny Dimes is made of. This is going to go back and go in and go to the point to see this is it. And to me, this kind of strikes a similar chord to what we saw with Josh Allen last season. Now, the Bills made an investment to get Stephon Diggs. It cost them a first-round pick, but they brought in an experienced receiver to help him out. And Kenny Golladay is certainly, I don't think that he's as good as Stephon Diggs. I think Stephon Diggs is a better player. If I was having to choose between the two, I would definitely take Stephon Diggs. But Kenny Golladay has shown that he can play in the NFL. He led the league with 11 touchdowns in 2019. That's one of the reasons why I thought he was going to go down and play in Jacksonville with Darrell Bevell. But of course, Marvin Jones Jr. went down there. I was correct in our predictions piece in saying a former Detroit Lions wide receiver would end up in Jacksonville. It was not the one that I was thinking of, but I like Kenny Golladay in New York. And I know that a lot of people are going to be hesitant to make the leap to go in there and go and because I know a lot of people loved Danny Dimes last season. I'm kind of back in. If I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, I think Kenny Golladay brings an extra element to this offense. And of course, we'll talk about this a little bit more once we see what happens in the draft. Hopefully they'll start looking a little bit more at offensive line, really protect him, really make the investment now to move forward. So I put Kenny Golladay as one of the best moves of free agency. I think it was one that we all kind of expected. My buddy Steve Lemming from Tacoma FD, Super Troopers, and all those movies loved the move as well. So I think this is pretty good. I think Kenny Golladay goes into that list of one of the best moves. One of the worst moves, though, JuJu Smith-Schuster going back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, JuJu said that he possibly could have gone to I had offers from the Kansas City Chiefs, which to me is, it's kind of like when one of your friends is bragging about a girl or somebody, they're like, hey, I could have gone out with that person. Like, I like to tell people, I was at a Kings game one time, and I was sitting behind Tiffany Amber Thiessen, from Saved by the Bell. So I said a joke that she laughed, turned around, locked eyes with me, and then went back and watched the hockey game. And now I like to tell my friends, oh yeah, I could have gone out with her. I could have asked her out in that moment. She thought I was funny. She could have gone into it. And to me, which is ridiculous. Like, what am I going to do? Like, at the time I was driving a Honda Accord. Like, I'm not pulling up to Tiffany Amber Thiessen's house in a Honda Accord, okay? And taking her to a date in a shirt that I bought at Ross. Stop it. That's not happening. But JuJu claiming that he was going to go to the Kansas City. Oh, the Chiefs offered me. No, they didn't. So just stop it. You went back and played, and you're going to play with Noodle Arm, Ben Roethlisberger. I really feel that JuJu is a good receiver in this league. I wanted him to go to a place that would have afforded him an opportunity to be a number one wide receiver again. Because he's going back to a situation, and you look at Chase Claypool being there. That's a guy that we all love. I don't know what's going on with Pittsburgh. I think there could be some obvious regression there. James Conner, likely not to be back. Who knows? Like, I'm not going to, as we're sitting here on Monday, I'm not going to dismiss it. But it's a crazy situation. I don't know what he was doing. By the way, Kelly Kapowski. Yeah, thank you guys. For anybody, Josh, Smokey. What's up, Josh? Good to see you. Thank you for joining us. And those of us who are, if you're listening to this on a podcast, which you can download on, all the Stitcher, Google Play, and all that Apple Pods and everything. We do a live stream. This show is live streamed on YouTube, youtube.com/AdamRakeNFL. Soon coming to Twitch. We're taking over the world. So best, Kenny Gallaudet. Worst, JuJu. Let's stay at the wide receiver position. One of the best moves I loved Curtis Samuel going to the Washington FT. And this is one where I'm kind of painting a thin line between fantasy and reality, because Curtis Samuel is going to a team where he's going to be reunited with one of his Ohio State teammates, Terry McLaurin. Let's just not talk about Oral Roberts beating the Buckeyes in the NCAA tournament. But I love Curtis Samuel. Of course, he's going to rejoin his former coach, Ron Rivera. And suddenly you look at this team, you look at this FT offense, and I know a lot of people are into Ryan Fitzmagic. Heineke is also there as well. So I don't know who the quarterback is going to be necessarily, but I love all these moves for the Washington FT. And I think that, again, I don't know, like you don't look at Curtis Samuel as a wide receiver one in fantasy, but he's definitely, if you play in 3 receiver leagues, depending on your scoring with flex positions or something like that, Curtis Samuel is going to be somebody that you're going to want on your team. And I'm really hopeful that they're going to find a way to diversify his role in the offense, get him doing a lot of different things. I think that's going to be an exciting offense in our nation's capital. Antonio Gibson is there. I'm really fired up. And I think that when I start doing my predictions for this year, now obviously the FT are the defending NFC East champions, I believe they're going to be a lot better. They've done a nice job. They've taken a team that was already having a nice budding Studley defense. Now they're starting to put in some offensive pieces. I really think that they did a nice job offensively. One move that I did not like, and again, this is not any damnation of the player, but Emmanuel Sanders, who I like Emmanuel Sanders. And while I'm sitting here and looking at Curtis Samuel and saying, like, Curtis Samuel to Washington is a better football move probably than a better fantasy football move, and that's fair. Emmanuel Sanders is definitely a better football move than it is fantasy football move. Now, obviously, you look at Buffalo, 72% of their passes went to wide receivers. That was the most in the NFL. That's a really good statistic. And you're like, okay, that can work. Last year he averaged close to 12 fantasy points per game with the New Orleans Saints on a team that already featured Michael Thomas. But I look at the way Buffalo is constructed in the wide receiver room. And I look at Stephon Diggs, who we talked about a moment ago, one of the best in the business. Cole Beasley is there. I love Cole Beasley. And I love Gabe Davis. I think everybody wants to have shares of Gabe Davis this season. So to me, I look at Emmanuel Sanders as a guy who's going to be a matchup play. So I love it. I love, sometimes, believe it or not, this is the thing that's very striking, and it hurts us fantasy football enthusiasts. It's sometimes these guys just want to go to a good football team and win. I know, it's crazy. We're like Emmanuel Sanders. You could have gone to another team. You could have gone back to San Francisco maybe and been the man. But he's going to Buffalo. Great football player. Great situation for him as a football player. Not great for us in fantasy football. Now, a lot of people are coming in here asking about Allen Robinson. Now, Allen Robinson, the Bears, I don't know if the Bears kind of tricked him, but the Bears started flirting with Kenny Golladay. I don't know if that was the kind of move where, Kenny, like Allen Robinson's like, I'm never signing my franchise. Oh, you guys are flirting with Kenny Golladay? Where do I sign? We've all had significant others who are like that, right? Like you're sitting there, like you're high school, and whoever you're dating in high school, you start talking to somebody else after chemistry class. All of a sudden, the person you're dating is like, wait, what's going on? You're talking to who? You're talking to Stephanie Smith? Oh, okay, what's up? By the way, the shout out to Stephanie Smith, who in high school had no idea I existed. Probably to this day, still doesn't. Like I could probably walk past her and she wouldn't know who I was. But in any event, that's kind of, I don't know if that's the situation that played out in Chicago, but Allen Robinson signed his deal. Maybe he loves Andy Dalton. And we talked about Andy Dalton in the top of the podcast. If you're joining us on the live stream, you're going to have to download the podcast as we went over a couple of more Andy Dalton notes. But it really is interesting to me. And we'll talk quarterbacks here in a moment. But I love Allen Robinson this year. And again, people are going to look at the situation and they're going to undervalue him in drafts. And they're going to be like, well, I don't know about Andy Dalton. And you're like, have you not seen the dog shit that he's played with through the entirety of his career, going back to Penn State? Hackenberg? What was Hackenberg? Who was the other guy? Who was the before Hackenberg guy that he had at Penn State? I'm sure Josh knows. Josh will chime in here. And Lee's asking Dalton. I mean, Dalton, like, whatever. Like, we've already known as Bears fans. We're used to this already. But I still believe that Allen Robinson's going to be the most disrespected superstar at the wide receiver position. Is still going to be very good. Hopefully he gets a long-term deal. He's signing his franchise tender, so we're not worried about him holding out. Let's just get him a long-term deal. Let's get him first of all, let's get him a quarterback. Sorry about that if my microphone cut out there for a second. Let's get him a quarterback, and let's go out there and get him a guy that let's get him his money, is I think that we're going to say. Devontae Adams or Stephon Diggs. You know what? This is a thing. I wish I could remember. I should probably pull this up. Let me see if I can pull up this kid's Instagram account, because Devontae Adams, I think, is probably the number one wide receiver. Probably. I'm going out on a limb. Way to go, Rank. Way to go out on a limb there. Devontae Adams might be good, everybody. No, there was this guy. Gosh, there's this nice kid who does great work. I'll give him a shout out here. He is Fantasy Guides on Instagram. He makes some great graphics, and he made one of the Fantasy Football Counselor, who is cool. Like, I have no beef with the Fantasy Football Counselor. I know a lot of people don't like him, but he's built a great following, and he believes in what he does, and I have no problem with the Fantasy Football Counselor. What I don't like is when people will go after like somebody's graphics or this stuff. They're like, whatever. Like, you can disagree whether Devontae Adams is going to be a great receiver or not. That's fine. What I don't like is when you're going after a kid who's like putting out cool graphics and saying that it looks terrible. Like, his stuff looks great. So leave him alone. He's doing great. Who was the quarterback before? Yeah, you know what? We like him. Yeah, plug Jay. Jay knows what I'm talking about. We don't hate him. Like, I don't hate the counselor. Like, he's a nice. I'm not even sure he's a nice person, but I don't want to hate on him because he's done a nice job, built up a great following. But it's like, bro, like, I love your bravado. I love what you say, but you don't have to be mad at every kid on Instagram. Like, chill out, man. Like, you're like Jay's the biggest dude of all of us. So when Jay tells you to settle down, you settle down. And by the way, Jay and I, we're going to do one of these. You know, we should get Josh. So Josh, Jay, I'm going to get you guys in on one of these. I don't want to just send one of these. You know what I'm going to do one day? I'm just going to send you a random email on StreamYard and see if you want to join. Obviously, maybe not today. I want you to be prepared, but we'll do that very soon, because I think people get tired of seeing me all the time. But let's look at the quarterback position. Some of the best and worst moves. Oh, so we like Allen Robinson as a best. Allen Robinson, that's a best. We don't like, so the best, Kenny Gallaudet best, Curtis Samuel best, Allen Robinson best, JuJu worst, Emmanuel Sanders worst. Like, good football move, not great for fantasy football. Let's talk about the quarterback position. Dak Prescott, easily the best move for quarterbacks. If you look, this is the most amazing thing. Last year in 5 games, Dak Prescott scored 135-ish fantasy points. In 11 games, Andy Dalton, the quarterback of the Bears currently, 136 points in 11 games. Best signing, Dak Prescott. Worst signing, Andy Dalton. And not only does the Andy Dalton thing hurt us because it's not Russell Wilson, we could have had this guy last year. Why did we trade a 4th-round pick for a guy we should have just got last year? Should have resigned him to a low-end deal this year and would have been fine. We would have at least known if he was a good quarterback or not. I'm still not ruling out the opportunity for the Bears to go out there and get a quarterback in the draft, or even Russell Wilson. But Dak Prescott, I love this. And you know what? A lot of people are going to be sleeping on Dak Prescott this season. The one good thing about the Dallas Cowboys in free agency, they didn't address their defense. They're going to be in a similar position to where they were last year, where they were in a lot of games where they had to throw the football. And so I love Dak Prescott. I love CeeDee Lamb this year. CeeDee Lamb rising up the draft boards. He's going to end up being the number one receiver for that Dallas Cowboys team. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be the Chris Godwin breakout, the Calvin Ridley breakout. Love CeeDee Lamb this season. What about Matthew Stafford? I love this move, obviously, because he's not playing for Detroit anymore, which is fine. We don't want him there because he's a good quarterback. Best move, Matthew Stafford going to the Rams. Worst move, the Lions getting Jared Goff. A less athletic version of Mitch Trubisky. He's Motor City Mitch, as I like to call him. Now, Matthew Stafford is interesting because one of the things that I noted when they first made that move is that the Rams love to run the football when they get near the goal line. That's been a thing, and that's one of the reasons why I looked at Jared Goff last year, because without Todd Gurley, I thought they're not gonna be able to run the ball as much as they did the following year. And then, sure enough, Sean McVay is running the ball to everybody. Malcolm Brown, Darrell Henderson, and then, of course, Cam Akers came on at the end of the season. I wonder, though, with Matthew Stafford, who is a clear upgrade over Jared Goff, I wonder if a lot of those opportunities that are going to Cam Akers at the end of the year, if he's going to trust Matthew Stafford, because one of the reasons they could have been running the football when they got near the goal line was a matter of trust. And that you don't trust Jared Goff. You know what I'm saying? Like, we all have trust issues. Like, we have a friend who, I have a friend who comes, when my friend walks over with a handle of Fireball, I don't trust him as much. We're going to tone it down a little bit. We're going to, no, I'm going to let you have every time you do a shot of Fireball, I'm not giving you a beer. You're just going to have to settle down. Sit there, mind your own business, do your thing. I think now with Matthew Stafford's like the guy who can hold his liquor. Matthew Stafford's coming out, let's do Jaeger bombs. It's fine. I have nothing to fear. I trust Matthew Stafford. Maybe this is a situation where Matthew Stafford takes a step on and Sean McVay's really able to expand his playbook when they get near the goal line. To me, when I'm doing mock drafts, and of course, starting next week, we'll start doing mock draft Mondays. That's really what we should be doing is mock draft Monday. We'll be doing those, but we're just doing a best and worst right now. Anyways, mind racing. Love Matthew Stafford. That's one of the best moves. Jared Goff, one of the worst moves. Now, Jared Goff has seen his fantasy points decrease in back-to-back seasons. That's playing with Sean McVay. You think it's going to get better in Detroit? If Sean McVay does not trust him, Detroit's not going to trust him. And there's a good possibility he doesn't end up as the starting quarterback. Detroit could obviously draft a quarterback. They have some draft capital to move and could end up moving up in the draft. So I don't like the Jared Goff move. What else are we looking at? Oh, let's talk about Carson Wentz for a moment. Again, love this move. Love it. You know, one of the things, though, is when we're looking at drafting fantasy quarterbacks, I think the way a lot of us construct our fantasy leagues, Carson Wentz, the one thing that hurts him is that he doesn't put up the rushing numbers. And I don't know if Philadelphia was putting together a team similar to the way a lot of us put together fantasy football teams, but they went with the guy who's able to run. And Jalen Hurts, and I'll remember this forever. Jalen Hurts, week 16, every time I lose to my friend Steve Lim, every time I face him in the finals, I always make the wrong decision at quarterback. And I started Jalen Hurts, and all he needed to do was not fumble, and I would have ended up winning. And it reminded me of a couple of years ago where I started Marcus Mariota over Dak, and Marcus Mariota broke his leg against the Jags. It is one of those, it's so frustrating. But I think that Jalen Hurts, and they want to make a push to surround him with a lot of talent. I haven't been seeing it out of the Philadelphia Eagles as much, but the one thing that I really do like about the Indianapolis Colts situation is that they have surrounded him with a lot of talent. Michael Pittman is good. Paris Campbell, if he can stay healthy, could do some things. Of course, Jonathan Taylor is a player that I absolutely love. So let's go best, Dak Prescott, best, Matthew Stafford, best, Carson Wentz, worst, Jared Goff, worst, Andy Dalton. I don't think I need to S on any other quarterback. So we'll leave it at that. But while we're talking about the Colts, let's talk about what they did with Marlon Mack, which to me sort of gets a worst, But at the same time, I don't care. Like, I know a lot of people are wondering what we should do with Jonathan Taylor. Now, we recorded an episode of NFL Fantasy Live, which I believe is airing on Thursday. So whenever you're watching this, the show's probably already been, whatever. Obviously, if you're live streaming, it hasn't reached air yet, but it will be. You'll notice we did a mock draft on that show. I took Jonathan Taylor with the 4th overall pick using the Bob Harris theory of draft this year's best team, not last year's best team, looking forward. And I love the upgrade at quarterback. It's not really an upgrade, but I love at least, at worst, it's a lateral move going from Phillip Rivers to Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz, I think at this point of his career, is better than Phillip Rivers at the back end of his career. I don't think that, I'm not saying like Phillip Rivers wasn't a better quarterback in his prime, but I still think that this is a little bit of an upgrade. And, we talked about the receivers, the offensive line. If it's not the best in the NFL, it's in the conversation. And at the end of last season, Jonathan Taylor really acquitted himself. And I know that a lot of people will be like, well, they signed Marlon Mack. Like, who gives? Who cares? That Marlon Mack play, I don't care at all. I don't care at all about that move because Jonathan Taylor is clearly their number one back. Marlon Mack is more of an insurance policy, somebody who knows the system, who is not there to usurp Jonathan Taylor, but to support Jonathan Taylor and in some respects, Nyheim Hines. Marlon Mack is still coming off an injury. Like a lot of teams are not going in on Marlon Mack. Not in a year where there's no real significant growth in the salary cap. A lot of good players are losing their gigs because of that. So Marlon Mack is just like, yeah, well, whatever. It's kind of like when you're going to a party and you don't know if they're going to be serving food and you're driving by your favorite Mexican joint. For me, it's Cancun, the city of Huntington Beach on the corner of Golden West and Warner. By the way, that place dominates. So good. In any event, and I know that Mexican food is it's a real personal thing. There's so many different styles. You know what I'm saying? I don't, it's not always for everybody. And a lot of people don't. And, a lot of people, who I'm talking about, won't go to the seedier places, which I grew up with. So I don't care. I don't care. I'm a walk in there. I have no fear. I walk in there, order my El Pastor and enjoy it. Love it. Sit there and feast on pickled carrots until my order's ready. But in any event, Marlon Mack is that, hey, let me stop by this burrito place before I go to the park because I'm not sure they're serving food because you don't want to get there and all they have is a bunch of Ritz crackers. And you're like, oh my God, I've already done 3 shots and all I've had is 4 saltines. This is terrible. This is a terrible situation. So you go down there, you get your base layer just so you're covered. That's all the Colts were doing here. Jonathan Taylor is the top running back in that offense. He is going to be one of the top running backs in fantasy football. And if there are guys or girls in your league who are not going to be taking Jonathan Taylor because Marlon Mack is on their roster, then better for you. You're way better off. So I will say that. So I love Jonathan Taylor. I think that he's great. I actually drafted him before Travis Kelce in that draft, which goes against my strategy. But if you're that high in the draft, personally, I feel like in a lot of my leagues, I'm going to have that combination of Kelce and Jonathan Taylor, not knowing how many teams or whatever like that. I think that's what I'm looking. I'm praying that he goes in the second round. Another running back who I love in the second round. And I know this is, Austin Eckler didn't sign with a new team, but the moves that the Chargers made on their offensive line this offseason has me moving Austin Eckler up a number of spots this year. And again, a lot of people will pass him up because he was not healthy or available for a swath of last season, which is fine. Use that to your advantage. When people are scared of it, don't try to convince people. Never try to convince your friends. I know, for me, it's different. This is my job. This is what I got to do. But you should never try to convince your friends that some player is going to be awesome. If you like Jonathan Taylor and Austin Eckler, and again, they got Tinsley, they got the tackle that they got as well. They did the significant upgrades on their offensive line. And so when you look at it and you're sitting there hanging out with your friends and you're like, I like Austin Eckler this year. When your friends laugh, they're like, that guy sucks or whatever. Let them say that. Like, don't try to convince them. That is one of the things I always see. Like, I'll hear people talking about it and then guys will argue. Like, why are you trying to convince somebody who you're competing against in a fantasy league that the guy you like is going to be really good? You should go the other way. Be like, you're right. Austin Eckler, garbage. Jonathan Taylor, you know what? Like, oh, these guys are terrible. You're right. I'm not going to draft them. Then come draft day, you're going to sit there and draft them both. So I love Austin Eckler. I also lost. Let me do some of the best. Let's go through the best. So I know Austin Eckler doesn't really count. We're playing fast and loose with the rules here. I love Chris Carson going back to fulfill his role. They're going to want to run the football. I think that's a solid move. So I love that one. That's a best. Philip Lindsay is a best for me. Now, I was arguing with some kids on the Instagram about David Johnson a couple of weeks ago, saying like, he's going to be a great value. 10th round, David Johnson, forget about it. Love that move. Love that pick. That was even after they added Mark Ingram. But now Philip Lindsay's in the mix. And now this running back room looks a little bit different. But I will tell you this. Philip Lindsay, wherever he's drafted, is going to end up being a value. Because every time that we try to paint him into a corner, to say like, oh, this guy can't do it now. He's got Royce Freeman there. He's not going to do it. Like, every time we do that, Philip Lindsay always finds a way to make himself the top back in that running back room. And I don't know what that team is going to look like in Houston. And we're taking a lot of liberties trying to win. If Tyrod Taylor ends up being the starting quarterback for Houston week 1, we might be having a little bit of a different conversation. But let's say it's Desean Watson, that's a situation I don't really want to go into. He could be traded. He's got some off the field problems, to put it mildly. But I'm still saying that Philip Lindsay, anytime he is given a chance, always finds a way to be that guy. Why are we not taking him in the double-digit rounds? That's a good move. And again, let your friends, don't even bring it up. Let your friends be like, yeah, I wouldn't touch him. Tell your friends, like, oh, I'm not touching that guy. 11th round, you're drafting him. 12th round, you're drafting him. I actually like that. I know a lot of people will look at it and why is he doing that? He's joining a team with David Johnson, who was fine last year, who I kind of liked for a while, but still gets hurt a lot. He's joining Mark Ingram, who is a healthy scratch a lot of times last year. Oh, give me that Philip Lindsay. Give me that Philip Lindsay. I love it. So I love that. That's a best for me. Some of the worst. Marlon Mack. Again, I don't even want to put that as a worst because it doesn't really it's whatever. You're keeping a guy who knows the system. You're fine. Kenyon Drake might be the worst one. Kenyon Drake might be the worst one. He's going to the Las Vegas Raiders. And it's not like the running back that the Raiders really need is the prototypical passing back. Kenyon Drake is somebody who can go out there and run the football between the tackles, who you already have with Josh Jacobs. So I don't get it. I don't understand what they're doing with that situation. Like, it's so puzzling to me. That was one that I'm like, what is happening? I love Josh Jacobs last season. Now you bring in Kenyon Drake. I don't know. Why? Why are we doing this? We wanted Kenyon Drake to go to a team like Seattle, now assuming that Chris Carson wasn't there, or him going to the Jets or somewhere where he could probably be an established number one back. Now they're going to go full-blown committee in Las Vegas, where we loved Josh Jacobs last year because he had no competition and he ran pretty well. But now John Gruden is acting like a fantasy manager and accumulating all these guys that he loves. Jonathan Brown, who's not a bad pickup. I mean, he's going to replace Nelson Aguilar. That's fine. But Kenyon Drake, to me, puzzles me. And it really hurts Josh Jacobs' value. and pushes it down. So I'm going to give that move a worst because I don't like it. I wanted Kenyon Drake somewhere. Go to Atlanta. Crying out loud. Go to a place. Why? And by the way, Jamal Williams, that's a worst. Jamal Williams backing up DeAndre Swift in Detroit? Like they're going to run the football. I'm not downgrading Swift that much. I would put him in the 3rd round maybe. See where he goes. See what the ADP looks like over the next couple of months. Man, I love DeAndre. I'm still into DeAndre Swift, but Jamal Williams, like that was a guy I thought could have gone to Atlanta, playing behind a rebuilt offensive line. I don't know what Atlanta's doing. I'm curious to see what they do. Maybe they're going to hit it in the draft. But whatever it is, I don't like it, Atlanta. You should have been in the mix for a couple of these guys. Josh Nelson, what's up? What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Rams. We love Cam Akers. I know we'll get into this as the summer rolls on, approaches, I should say. We like Cam Akers. He's going to be fine. David Montgomery, I think even with Tariq Cohen coming back, David Montgomery is going to be a good option. David Montgomery is a good football player. I've been seeing him go in the 4th round this year. To me, that's a good spot for him, which is perfect. The guy, the RB4 from last year going in the 4th round, perfect. Again, Tariq Cohen comes in. They're finding playmakers. Cordell Patterson doesn't look like he's going to be returning to the Bears. So maybe that's better. Maybe that is better. Maybe on 4th down, 4th and short, they're not going to be able to go to Cordell Patterson anymore. So I love David Montgomery. By the way, want to do a best and worst for the tight end position. I think Jonnu Smith is actually a best. If you look back at the Patriots, they've run a lot of 12 personnel over the course of their career. If you think back to one of their peak seasons when they had Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez, it's tough to bring up. It's tough to bring up, but from a purely football standpoint, this is something that the Patriots always like to do. Always like to have 2 quality tight ends. So even with Hunter Henry already signing with that team, I do believe that Jonnu Smith's going to end up getting his opportunities. There's a debate whether it's going to be Hunter Henry near the goal line, Jonnu Smith near the goal line. I think they're both athletic as hell. I kind of favor Jonnu Smith. So that'll be the guy that I'll be looking at later. Although I love taking Travis Kelce super early. So I'm not even, hopefully I don't have to worry about that and don't have to draft him too early. Although it seems like the word is out on the Travis Kelce thing. It's so funny. For the last 2 years, I've been taking Travis Kelce in the 1st round. And maybe I'll just do a separate video on this at some point. Now, all of a sudden, Travis Kelce's getting drafted in the 1st round and people acting like this is some sort of goddamn revelation. Like, you should have been on this a couple of years ago. You would have benefited from it. But whatever. I don't like, however, Gerald Everett going to Seattle. Because number one, we don't know who Seattle's quarterback is going to be with Russell Wilson going to Chicago. I'm kidding. I don't know. But Gerald Everett, what happened to Will Dissly? I wanted Will Dissly to be a thing. Let Will Dissly eat. That is something I would love to see. So I give that best. I want to give that a worst. But in any event, thanks everybody for joining us. And late breaking as this was going on, Elgin Baylor has passed away, one of the best basketball players of all time. Shout out and respect to him. One of the most overlooked NBA superstars of all time. Love Elgin Baylor. So pour one out for him tonight. Thank you everybody for checking out the best and worst. We'll be back in a couple of days. We'll be back at the very least next Monday for a mock draft Monday. But thank you for hanging out. Unless, we'll be back when Russell Wilson gets traded to the Bears. We'll be back. But thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys later. Thanks to Mitch Hine for putting this podcast together. Talk to y'all later. Bye.